one and all, and welcome to another episode of Bagger Chat. My name is Mitch Pattinson, and as always, we're joined by Ethan Daffy. And today we are previewing our round 15 clash against the Geelong Football Club. Of course, it's Carlton v Geelong, Friday, 21st of June, 7:40 p.m. Melbourne Cricket Ground. It's crazy how quickly the season has gone. We were just speaking about it before, Daffy Boy, about how quickly the season's gone and how quickly the year's gone. We're up to round 15, but we're also up to the 21st of June. But first things first, Daffy Boy, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, it's been like I said, like we were saying before, we had the 10-day break before Essendon, and it felt like forever until we played that game, and then that game came along, and then now it feels like the break's long, even though it's probably a shorter break than other teams who've had the bye. But no, it's another challenge. I feel like every week is a challenge against a team in the top eight. It's unbelievable. I think our average, I was listening, I don't know what podcast it was. Sorry if you're listening and you said this on your podcast, but I think our average opponent, right, their ladder position at the time of playing them is fifth. Is fifth. That's the hardest in the league, I think. Sydney's had their average, ninth. So the teams they've been playing, obviously the average is out. But like we played Giants in the first week, when they were first, sorry, not the first week, but when they were first on the ladder, you know what I mean? It's just kind of this trend that keeps happening. Not saying it's, anything, harsh on us or whatever, but just feels like we're, got a challenge after challenge in front of a packed out crowd every single week. But, that's what we have to expect as a Carlton supporter nowadays. If, you play good footy, you're going to have big crowds at the MCG.
Yeah, well, I try and relate Carlton for the next 5 to 10 years with what kind of Geelong have done over the past probably 2 decades. Let's be honest right now, with how successful they've been since that 2007 premiership win against Port Adelaide, and they've just been so like sustained success every single year. And even the year when they do have that off year and they don't make finals, when they come ninth or 10th, like they don't miss it by a long way. They kind of miss it by a few spots. And I think last year they finished like 14th or something. I don't know exactly what they were last year, but they were quite low on the ladder by memory.
Yeah,
I
it'd
don't know
be
if
maybe
that's
like a 11th, maybe.
yeah,
They were
yeah,
close, like you said. They were kind of a couple games. Like, it was quite close near the end, that kind of finals race. But yeah, they had a shocker of a year. But it was like 11th to 12th. It felt like they were still in the finals race,
yeah.
even though they were just playing terrible footy.
Yeah, because I think by memory, I think they were playing against the Dogs towards the end of the year, and they like I
Yeah,
think the Dogs had to win, but I think the Cats, like if they won the week before, that could have been a bit more.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it was a close finish last year by memory, but Def Boy, let's now move on, and I'm going to throw straight to you. So obviously this week it's our ninth annual Carlton Respects game. You kind of think about that straight away, and Carlton haven't been overly great in the game wise, but it's kind of beyond the game. It really is, and it's something that you've written down right here. So I'm going to throw straight to you, Def Boy. So Carlton Respects game. Take us through with what you've written down here, but also your thoughts. And also shout out to Carlton, the video that they brought out a few days
yeah.
ago with Mark
That's
Pickett and Harriet's. Don't know a lot. I think it's I
yeah,
mean, at least I got Harriet, but
yeah,
like to actually unite AFL and AFLW was great, I think.
yeah, yeah.
But what's your overall thoughts on? I mean, obviously, like take us through with what your thoughts are of the game, but also the cause as well.
Yeah, on the video quickly. Yeah, that was a really well done. A good way of kind of showing the whole, lack of gender equality or just the mindset going for different genders. Like obviously the video portrayed, Pitto went for a run, chucked his headphones in, didn't have to worry about his safety, whereas the AFLW player was in a whole different boat. She had headphone volume low, and it was just a really kind of a good way and a good way to think outside the box in terms of video idea. So shout out to the media team for putting that together. But yeah, it's obviously the ninth one, and people always talk about the record, but I think it's like you said, it's more than that. Because it's a big cause. Like it's since 2016, and what I love about it is it's our own initiative,
Yeah.
as a football club. So I don't know, other teams have other initiatives, whereas Richmond have the Madeline and Alana Foundation, where they wear the purple kind of thing on their arm sleeve of the jumper, and Essendon's got some other ones. I think it might be the Starlight Foundation, one where they wear the yellow. So They're all different causes, but for this one, obviously, it's promoting, gender equality and the prevention of violence against women, because it's just ridiculous and it's getting worse in a time where we should all be more educated on this. So obviously Walshy and Gover at the Coburg Primary School, I think today, talking to kids about it. But as a whole, we just need to be better at it. And the stats this year, I was at work today and I was just listening to the radio and they were talking about it. It's just not good enough. As the male population, it's just not good enough at the moment. And we just need to stand up to this, and games like this is fantastic to spread awareness. And but for me, it's not about just spreading awareness, but we've got to, put these, words into action. Because we just can't be letting this happen. And hopefully, these kind of causes and the education for, younger people and us as well. Like we aren't out of this education. We've got to be educated better as well. So yeah, it's just a really, really good cause. And the jumper looks great as well. They've got the kind of on the top of the sleeves and the numbers orange as well, which looks kind of sick. So, they change that up every year. And yeah, it's a good cause. And it's probably going to be the biggest Carlton Respects game they've ever had in terms of crowd, I'd imagine.
How many people do you reckon what's your guess right now because it's a Friday night game, primetime game. What's your rough estimate for the crowd?
I think 80 plus. I think it has to be 80 plus. Carlton home game. If it was a Cats home game, you might go, ooh, like, I don't know. Well, I guess the Cats home game last time was packed as well, but that was probably due to the Blue Baggers. But yeah, I think 80. I think 80, and I think it'll be our fifth 80 crowd of the year. And Carlton Collingwood's already sold out, so that's another 80 plus. So it's just we're breaking records left, right, and centre. And even though I do like a quieter game at some stages of the season, it is good to have these packed crowds because it's got that finals atmosphere. And I was lucky enough to be at the Hawks Richmond game on the weekend, and that first quarter, I felt like I was watching a final. It was against, what is it, 12th versus 17th, but it was just this, obviously the aura of Dustin Martin and that whole celebration, but it was just because it was 92,000. It felt like I was at a final. Like every contest, that feel like it's like, oh, everyone's riding every contest like it's the grand final or a prelim. So yeah, the big crowds just make you feel like it's a bigger game than it sometimes is. But I think this weekend is a massive game for both clubs, I think.
And I think this is something that we obviously have to get used to with having 100,000 members, is saying that we've kind of always experienced as a Carlton supporter, bet like every single game, like even when we play against some oppositions that usually don't have a lot of members and they don't usually show up at an away game, we still kind of get the supporters there because we have 100,000 members to ourselves. But yeah, well, I mean, like I think I'll go back to the Respects game, and you said it very well. I think that we usually try and stick on, like we usually want to try and get away from the overall politics of AFL, but also the world as well. But I think it's obviously a thing that we need to kind of mention right now, and it's unbelievable how some people still think it's okay to kind of go ahead with this, they haven't been educated of why this isn't on in this, like in this society. Like even when we were educated in, I'm sure like high school to primary school, when we were educated, like we were just like, oh, we didn't even think that was a part of society. Like it's just not on. But then we're like 15 years down and we're still experiencing it, and it's just unbelievable. So it really is, like, as you said, like it's down to, it's not the words, it's actually the actions. Like you can say whatever you want. Like it's anything in life. You can say whatever you want. You can put goals towards something, but it's actually actioning the act and trying to actually go ahead to actually stop it. And when you see something like that, where you actually might think that it is something that could lead to violence, call it out. It could be anywhere. Like, and that's also the tough thing. And that's something that I like sometimes might struggle with. I mean, I haven't been in the position to witness that, but I feel like it would be tough to kind of stand out. But that's the thing, like we have to try and stand away from our own feelings, but also say that isn't on overall. And then, I mean, obviously we're both fortunate that we haven't had to go through any violence, but there's people out there that obviously have to deal with it on a daily basis, which isn't on. And that's why these Respects games, it's really is beyond football, because at the end of the day, it simply isn't on. But let's transition back to the game side of things, Daffy Boy. But we're now going to move straight on to a bit of a stat that obviously you have mentioned a few times, but take us through the stat that you found out through the week, Daft Boy, about Carlton and the Cats 2001. What have you got?
It's an interesting one. I think I sent it to you during a couple of days ago because I was just like reading it, going, really? Well, it was just a really, really just amazing stat, and it kind of shows you where both clubs have been for our lifetime. And so yeah, so it's the first time since 2001 that Carlton will be favourites heading into a game against the Cats. And when you look back at that, you go, gee, like for me, my first point of call and thought was how good they've been, right? And their sustained success is like you touched on. We want to kind of get to that point where we're not, kind of backing ourselves in just for a 5-year period. We want to back ourselves in for a 10-year period where we're, constantly kind of challenging for a premiership or top four, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, first time favourite since 2001. I was -1 years old. So, I was, not even thinking about bloody baggers chat, Patto, at that point. But, it's unbelievable. And it also shows the lack of, competitiveness from our side. But I feel like there was a period of time where we always had their number when they were very good, especially. I think it was 2011 when they won the flag. We got them on that Monday where Jeffy Garlick kicked 5. And there's all sorts of games where we kind of knocked them off like when they were really good. They had a really, really good team. So, but then there was some other games where you go, gee whiz, like, there was no point in turning up. But what's your view on the whole stat?
That's unbelievable, isn't it? Like when you sent it through, I was like, we haven't had a time in our lives. Because I was obviously born in 2001, so
Yeah.
this is the way it happened. I'm like, that is unbelievable. That in 23 years we have never been favourites against the Cats. I was even thinking like 2010, 2011 when I think it was 2010 when we beat the Cats in that red footy day game. But thinking back to that, like that was more of an upset because the Cats were reigning premiers. So I think they would obviously expect to go into every game as favourites. But yeah, like saying that, I'm like, that is unbelievable. Because like as you said, it's more showing that Geelong have been so good for so many years.
Yep.
And like 20 years, 2001, that's 23 years. It's unbelievable. But I think it's more down to like Carlton have been so ordinary that they haven't been favourites in a single game against the Cats, and we play against the Cats every single year, once a year, if not sometimes twice a year, as we have this year. So it's unbelievable, and I don't know how many games we have played since 2001, but it would be funny because
at least 24.
Yeah.
25, 24, because we played them twice sometimes.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's unbelievable because I think that 2001 game was actually at Icon Park. They played that game at Icon Park, and there was the big Darren Milburn knocked out Silvani, which was one of the most violent ever things. My mum says it's the most unbelievable. If you're a younger person, haven't seen that, watch it on. They followed him out to the car park, and fair enough because his bloke fucking knocked him out. He smirked to the crowd. He was absolute bastard. I reckon if you ask my mum, if you ask older Carlton's fans about Darren Milburn, they will, those moments where you just straight away, you remember for the rest of your life. So funny enough, that was the last time we were favourites against them. So I think we absolutely smashed them. That was before the Cats got really good. So yeah.
I reckon a player that kind of comes to mind, like if I'm a Hawthorn supporter and you kind of think about players that you hate, you probably think of Jed Lamb against James Sicily. I think it was 2014 or maybe 2016 when Jed Lamb and James Sicily had a bit of a banter. But I think, let's be real, we're Carlton supporters, but that's probably the only moment that Jed Lamb has had in his AFL career. I'll be up and about against James Sicily. But shout out to you, Jed Lamb, if you're watching. I don't think you would be, but shout out to you. So, David Roy, let's now move on to the injury list. So there's 3 players. We were expecting maybe Adam Cerra or Jack Martin potentially to come back into the side, but I'm just going to touch on the 3 players that obviously will be a test, but then I'll throw to you, Daft Boy, to touch on the rest of the players. But obviously, Orazio Fantasia, Mark Pitton, and David Cunningham is all back into full training, so they should be expected to come back to some sort of level of football this week. So that's another talking point with maybe Mark Pittonet if he does come back in. But I think we kind of both know. I think I know your opinion on that. With Mark Pittonet coming back in, especially with Teddy K's at sole ruckman, I don't think that's a chance this week. But also Razia Fantasia, it's another player that, like Corey Durden, obviously came in last game for Razia Fantasia for the Dons game. So that's another talking point. But Cutters as well is a good player, but I also don't expect him to come back in. So Daft Boy, take us through the other names that you've got that unfortunately won't be back this week, but also touch on the three players that we've just mentioned then.
Yeah, it's obviously with those three names you touched on, they're probably, borderline selection around the mark, but I just don't think any of them will be selected this week. Fantasia might be one. I don't know, but I don't have him in. But he could be one they pull out of the hat a little bit in terms of his role and how he kind of fits into the system against the Cats. But he didn't play against the Cats, I think, last time. I think he might have been a laid out for Jackson Binns. So I think he was a laid out and then made Binns the sub. And
Yes.
so a good little memory there. But the other three, that's how much of a nuffy I am at the moment. But the final three guys, obviously Ches looks like he's a lock for next week, which is fantastic. He's in full training, so you don't really want to risk a guy like that too early. You want to make sure he's right. You want to make sure he's really, really right because he's had that issue with his hammy. I don't really want to see that just keep recurring because we need guys like that. In terms of depth, also just adds to the depth of players in your side. Not saying he's the depth player, but it might push another guy down and he goes up and in his position, whether it's a Carroll or whoever. Jack Martin, obviously, is unavailable this week. He is training this week. He has been training this week, which is good. Will be assessed further next week. I doubt he plays next week. That's just my thinking on him in terms of his injuries and his luck, I think, and also being patient with him as well. But who knows? I'd love to have him back. And then obviously Cotters is 2 to 3, which he's tracking well with his foot injury, which he sustained kind of round 11-ish, wasn't it? It was like a kind of round 11, round 12. So he's another name where you go, gee, hey, how's the selection going to go? But that's about it with the injury list, and we'll get into our kind of ins and outs for this weekend.
Yeah. So just a question on Jack Martin, and then obviously well said about Chera and Cochwell, and also Jack Martin. Obviously, they're three crucial ins, and they're players that obviously will make our side a lot better. And as you said, then also about the depth, and then we can even name like Jack Carroll and Corey Durden, who they're in the senior side right now, and they've played a vital part this year to a stretch. Like I wouldn't say vital part. I think Carroll and Durden, like they've been solid enough. They've been serviceable is probably more of a suitable word. But just a question on Jack Martin. So if Jack Martin is set to play next week, so say he's all fit, like Andrew Russell's like he would give him the tick of the box saying, yep, you're free to play this week. Do you want him to come through the VFL and earn his stripes again to come back into the senior side? Or do you think that he's too good of a player and on too much of a pay packet? Well, he's not really on much of a pay packet now, but what's your thoughts on that? Do you reckon Jack Martin, if he is free to play, I mean, not free to play, set to play next week from his injury, would you rather bring him back through the VFL, earn his stripes, or comes right back into the senior side?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he did hurt himself at training after that game he played against the D's. So I don't think it was an issue about rushing him back. I just think it was a more unlucky. Well, you just don't never know with him, but I think it is mainly unlucky. He's just that sort of player, I think, and we're gonna have to accept that. But I think you probably do bring him back in. I want him kind of ready for finals, and he played really well in the final series last year off the back of a block of games before the finals. It was probably the same time last year, to be honest. He came back around round 15, round 16 in a site with Fogarty. I think he might have come back for that Gold Coast game, or Hawthorn maybe. I think he might have come back.
I think it was Hawthorn. Yep, round 16.
So you look at that, and that was round 16 to round 24, and he had a really, really good patch of footy where he was obviously impactful. But yeah, you want him playing for him. I think it's people go, oh, just a couple games. I think I need more than a couple just to make sure his body's right to go for the final series, which is, how hard those games are, Patto. And we know that very well last year. Like they're close games of footy, and they're neck and neck. It doesn't matter who you're playing, even if you're a clear favourite. they're hard and tough games. The intensity's up, the crowd's up and about. The body, obviously, he got suspended, which shows that just the intensity of finals sometimes gets to your head. So, yeah, I'd like to see a good block of footy before finals. Obviously, if we are playing in finals, I'd imagine we are, but yeah, I'd get him straight back in for mine. And it puts some pressure on spots as well. So up forward, because I think we've had kind of lack of pressure for the small forward spots as of late.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the lack of pressure is probably what we're going to swing straight into now. And it's obviously the ins and outs. And there's a player that's been killing it in the VFL in Jesse Motlop. And I'm going to throw straight to you, Daft Boy, with your ins and outs and your sub. Do you have any changes this week?
Yes. So I've got one out from the weekend and also a demotion to the sub from a player who was obviously starting on the ground. So pretty quickly out, I've got Corey Durden. Nothing against his performance last week when he came on. I thought he was fantastic. I thought it was a perfect sub integration by the coaching staff. Right time, right player too as a sub. You know, I think some teams have really struggled in terms of selecting their sub, but I thought that was a really, really good selection for the type of game we were playing against the Bombers. We needed some speed because we were lacking that at probably the back end of the third quarter. So that was good. Nothing against Dirds, but he's just playing twos, unluckily. And my in is Jesse Motlop, the guy you just touched on, hasn't played all year. Gee, it's a fair player to bring into that side. And he's a bit older now. He's a bit bigger. We haven't really seen him, to be honest. And, we don't know what he's going to bring. He could be, a 10 times better player than last year because he's from the year before to last year was great. So I'd imagine he's going to keep going up and up and up. So, yeah, he's in for mine, and my sub will be Jack Carroll, I think. We can really stretch out their midfield. I thought he played pretty well against them last time, and I think he can't. He might have started on the ground because Binns was sub, obviously.
Yeah.
So Carroll started on the ground. He kicked a goal from 50.
Yes.
He played a bit of half forward, but he played nicely. It was like you said, he's been serviceable and nice. Like, you know what I mean? Nice. Like, he just, if he's in the side, I'm like, okay. So, okay, he's in, and he's done his thing, and he's improved that little bit. You know what I mean? He hasn't been, a skyrocket, but he's gradually getting better. So, yeah, he'll be my sub. Just think we can get that depth out of this team against a side that, I'm not having to go at their midfield, but that's probably their weaker, line.
Yep. No, well, I mean, love it. I mean, I absolutely love that. Ins and outs, and I love it so much because it's the exact same as mine. Ins and outs, Jesse Motlop, Corey Dern, and then obviously the sub, Jack Carroll. But I've just got a question about another player that we could potentially bring in, but also another player that we could play as a sub if we really want to drop Jack Carroll back to the VFL. And it's a Razio Fantasia.
Yeah,
so you talk about the trying to stretch their midfield out, and I think that's something that we definitely have to focus on. Like, obviously at the MCG, it's a bigger ground, and it's obviously more of a midfield type of ground. And I think I would rather play that extra midfield, knowing that you've got like Jai Clark, who arguably shouldn't be in that best 22, but also a guy like Dangerfield might be returning. Maybe a guy like Jack Harrell is a suitable sub, but Razio Fantasia as a sub, or even being brought into the side alongside Jesse Motlop potentially. What's your thoughts on that?
I think his hate that he's copped the last month or so has been kind of unwarranted.
Yeah.
And obviously reflected in one of the comments we received last week about him or whatever. But he's kind of become that bully boy that every team has. I know every team has it, but it's just like it's just a quick little statement on him. There's too many of those comments on the Instagram. We're second on the ladder.
Yeah.
And we're out here worrying about bagging one of our own players. Do we really need to be doing that? I know, I'm just never a fan of it. It doesn't matter if they're playing well or not. Like, do we need to be bagging them on socials and that? But in terms of Razio, I think it's a good idea if he ends up as a sub, because you can play high, as we've touched on. You can kind of play on the wing here and there, can't he? So, and he can that 18-man defense works when he's around, because he's kind of that leader around. He kind of directs, and that was my one point against Port Adelaide that he did really well. He set us up at certain stages of the game, so that was really good to see. But yeah, definitely as a sub, and I wouldn't be against him playing either. So I know other people see that differently to us, but I think there's something about him that he's just I don't know. It's just he's got a bit of veteran. He's got enough games on his belt. He can play on the big stage without being too worried about it. You kind of know what you're getting out of him. And I thought his form heading into before he missed the last game was fantastic, by the way. So not fantastic, but he was having those half moments. Like he almost kicked bloody goal a year against Port Adelaide right from the boundary. And he was
Mm.
having those kind of moments, wasn't he? So yeah, I wouldn't be against it at all.
Yeah, I think like another word. I mean, we mentioned earlier, like serviceable. He's been
Yeah,
serviceable. He's done his role,
yeah.
and his role has changed. Probably the last 3 games that he's played,
Mm,
his role has changed, and we probably were one of those players probably through that round 7, round 8 kind of period of the season. Like we were not shit talking Erosa Fantasia, but be like he needs to go back to the VFL. Or
yeah.
like stiff, but see you, mate. But
Mm,
round 10, round 11, round 12,
yeah.
we saw a shift. And I think he was quite unlucky to be injured for the Dons game because I don't reckon Corey Dun would have made his way back in. And now that he's injured and now Jesse Motlop is set to come back into the senior side, it's stiff on Rajo Fantasia. But it's also great because even if he doesn't play this week, he goes back into the VFL, but he finds his way back into the side because we speak about Mark Pitnet playing a vital role towards the end of the season, heading into
Yeah.
finals. Araza Fantasia is one of those players because Jesse Motlop's coming back for his first game of the season potentially.
Mm,
He might have 4 weeks and then we might rest Motlop for a game like North Melbourne and
yeah.
then Araza Fantasia might come back in. And he might play a really good game and you're like, oh, wow, okay, well, who do we go with? Like heading into finals, who do we go with? Do we go with Fantasia? Do we go with Motlop? Do we even go with Corey Durden? But
Yeah.
another player and another like thought that kind of went through my head when you were speaking then was the forward structure. We have Fogarty, we've got Hollands, we've got a lot of players that is that mid player who's playing on that forward line, like Matt Kennedy as well to a stretch as well. Do you think that Erasio Fantasia coming in alongside Motlop could potentially be a like a good move, knowing that Fogg, Hollands. Well, I mean, Hollands is getting enough midfield time anyway, but I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
speaking about Chera when he does eventually come back in because you would think that he's a lock to come back into this side. How do you see that happening? Because with Chera coming back in, it
Mm.
might take time away from Hollands or Fogarty, or do you see it where Chera comes back in? I know that we touched on it in the review episode of the Dons game. I think we mentioned it then, but what do you see happening then? Like, do you think Fantasia coming back in alongside Motlop could change that forward structure?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. For me, I don't think you can take away the minutes from Hollands
No.
because I think, like I said in the review, I think I said it, or the mid season
Season.
centre half, like not a centre half. He's a centre half mid where a lot of his priorities ahead of the ball. You know what I mean? Like he's that goal kicker. We don't really have that guy. Like people talk about Cripps 2022, but it's different. It's a different type of, it's like a Rosie type player where he can play in the middle. He's silky. I'm not saying to that level, but just like, well, he's only 21, right? But it's that kind of centre half like Petrarcas and guys like that. You know what I mean? Where they do their damage in the forward half rather than just in the middle of the ground or at stoppage, which a lot of our mids do, which is great, which is fantastic. But he just provides a different element, especially at stoppage in the forward line. He's kicking goals. So, in terms of those selections, you might see Cripps play forward more. You'll see, you know what I mean? So, it's interesting because, Alex Chincotta's obviously in there. Do we take him out? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, are we going to keep tagging every week? I'm not sure. I really think it's going to be a player by week type selection, game by game. Whether, next week there'll be different priorities at Richmond. Whether we're trying to look at Taranto or we're trying to look at Baker or something like that in terms of tagging. But, this week, we'll touch on before we film, there's a few guys in there that, you don't really know who he's going to tag. I don't think he's going to tag Danger. I think, I'm not sure you'd do that. Like you said, with Holmes, he might tag Holmes. He might tag Myers. He might even pick up a Stengel. Who knows? Like he can do it all, to be honest. So, yeah, selections are going to be an absolute headache come the end of the year with all these players back, especially when it gets to the point where Cotters is back.
Mm. Do you think that's a good thing going into each game with the unknown?
Uh, yes, or I'm happy that the players are available. That's where I'm happy. And we just kept, like, the start of this year, we've weathered the storm in terms of injuries. Like, we're 9-4. We haven't really had a consistent year with the team, except for the back six since the Gold Coast game. What's happened since then? We've won every game.
Mm.
And when we get onto the defense in the opposition watch and our defense, I just think, like, it's all about that consistency and continuity. I don't mind players coming in and out in certain positions, whether it's half forward, etc. But we were having these major, like, ball users like McGovern out and Sard out. You can't afford to have both of them out, because look at our scores from turnover. It's like, I think we're like second in the league. And,
Mm.
and 2 years ago, Pat, we were talking about we're not scoring from the back half. Our one wood was this clearance. And now our clearance work's actually gotten worse, but it's better for us because our focus is on the defensive stuff and our transition's been phenomenal. So it's funny how kind of our whole framework of how we're successful has completely changed. And it's kind of added another layer to our game.
Yeah, and I think it's a different way to win because we know that our one wood is the clearances. But as you said, like
Yeah.
that may have gone back a few in the ranks, but on the
Yeah.
other side, our defensive work has been like phenomenal all year. And I think like that's something that I think from with what Vossi's done, I think Pitnet like is so crucial for the clearance work, but that's
Yeah.
our one wood and we get predictable. When say with TDKs at sole ruckman and Harry Mackay's at second ruck, and that's why Jack Silvani next year would be crucial as that second ruck. But
Yeah.
even if we do play Silvani as that second ruck and keep Harry Mackay as that forward, I don't know, because I like Harry Mackay as that second ruck because it gets him around the footy a little bit more.
Yeah.
But like more to do with the whole defensive, like I'll say structure, but I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of the way that we're managing our like we've got so many strings to our bow, but also we don't want to show everything as well. Because
No.
come
Yeah.
the time, we have a few other things. And one of the things that we've kind of shown this year is Alex Chincotta. Like
Yeah.
that player that I mean, I'm sure at the start of the season we didn't even think would be a tagger, but he's come out and been one of the best taggers in the comp because he's keeping these star players to
Yeah.
very low impact. But I think every club, every side now heading into each
Yeah.
week is kind of moving in with a potential tagger because one of those
Yeah.
players is George Hewitt, but we think like I'm sure Voss would see Hewitt more as a like he has more impact as that genuine midfielder rather than that tagging midfielder. But Chincotta is that brilliant player where, and then that's also another conversation where when Shera does come back in, what happens with Hewitt? What happens with Chincotta? What happens with
Yeah.
Kennedy?
Yeah.
There is a lot of conversations going there. But Dave Boy, let's now move on to our opposition watch. So for the viewers who don't know what this is, we touch on the back line, midfield, and forward line for the Cats, and we touch on each player for each line, and we kind of touch on why they're in impact come Friday night. But we don't know what players we're going to touch on. So Dave Boy, I'm going to go straight to you, mate. Who have you got for the back line opposition watch for the Cats?
I think it's a guy who can get tagged, and he has been tagged the
Yeah.
last 6 weeks and been found out since, well, I think he missed the Carlton game with concussion, and then he's come back. He's just really struggled for a guy who I rate massively in this competition. Nothing against him in his form. He's just off compared to his standards. I know they've been off as well. So it kind of intertwines, isn't it? When him and Jez, oh, I'm talking about Tom Stewart here, but him and Jez are a little bit off, just a little bit. I'm not having a go. Like, I know Jez will kick his four this week. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of Tom Stewart, yeah, he has been off, and he's a player that Chincotta can go to. There's no doubt in my mind he can do it. And he could be one of them. I actually think it will be either Tom Stewart or a Brian Myers, who I think that impact going forward, like kicking his assist work, if you can cut that out, if you can cut at least half of those out, Patto, the scoring opportunities are going to be massive. Just like completely, cut. And that was our issue with playing them last time. We lead goals through guys like Myers, through guys like Holmes. You know what I mean? Like they were just hurting us forward of the ball. So, yeah, Tom Stewart's one to watch because he's just too good of a player. And for me, it's with our entries. And our entries have been really, really good the last few weeks. And I think what hurts us when we struggle to get opportunities at goal, even though we have the inside 50s, is that just straight down the line. If you just change that angle a little bit, 45, just a little bit, doesn't have to be much. But when you know, like, you look at Darcy Moore at Collingwood, when you just kick it a little bit away from him and he can't set up on the kick, he's not taking grabs. Same as Stewart. You see him down the line, you go, I know Harry's there, right? But you might just kick it a little bit left of him. Get Harry to lead up to it. You know what I mean? Just a little cut the angle. Don't go back pocket, straight to forward pocket. You know what I mean? Like straight down the line. Just change the angles. It's so hard to read as a defender. Because even in local footy, when you play footy and the other teams changing angles and you're going, fuck, I'm not going to be able to pick up my man here because I don't know where the ball's going. It's unpredictable. And like you said, with unpredictability in a team, it also leads to the unpredictability of how we play. And that's going to be huge to just nullify his impact in the air for me.
I think that's something that Geelong do really well. And we saw it against the Cats earlier on in the year. Like, it's something that we couldn't do. We couldn't do it. We always tried to bomb it in, and we were consistently. I'm sure it. I mean, it obviously worked out well enough because we kicked 103 points, but on the other side, Cats kicked 118 points, and we always touch on how easy they get their shots in front of goal, and we touch on like.
And we've been doing it, and we've been doing it now since probably after that game. I know some of our wins have just been easier goals.
Yeah, and like they would get 15 goals or 16 goals, but they'd get 16 goals, 3. And actually, touch on this is completely. I don't know why I'm not. I don't know why I'm touching on this right now, but
North on the weekend.
Yeah, like 16 goals.
19-3, 19-4 they kicked.
Oh yeah, because they kicked. Yeah, it was a bloody high scoring game.
They lost. They kicked 19-4 and lost.
And they lost.
Unbelievable that game.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. But now, so I'm just going to ask you a question before I touch on my opposition watch. So right now, you touched on there about Chin Cotter. I'm being a little bit unfair on you, but right now, if you were to touch on a player that Chin Cotter would go to, I know that you mentioned Myers and Stewart. Who would you put him to out of those two?
I think, we lead goals last time against them, so I don't think we're going to lead them this week, just off the back of how our defence is playing, just the form. Not saying it won't happen, but I think you go to a Myers. And just do not let him get the fucking ball. Do not even let him get near it. You know what I mean? Like those guys, they dart around and get cheapies. Don't let him get it. You know what I mean? Even if it puts, forces them to go to someone else, whether it's Brad Close, who's just not as good as Myers in terms of goal assists and stuff. He's a good player, but he's not to the level of it. Force him to go to someone else. Force Chezza. Force bloody Mullen, or force whoever to get the ball inside rather than him. And if it works out well, it works out well. But as long as Myers is away from that ball, I'm not saying he's not going to get the ball, but it's about the way Chincotter's been cutting down these guys' touches. And it was Butters and guys, like it was Butters, I think it was Anderson. No, Miller, wasn't it? Was it Miller versus Gold Coast?
Miller and Anderson.
Yeah, it was a bit of and it's just cutting it down. It's not, people go, but they, against Merritt the other week, he was fantastic on Merritt, but they go, but he had 23 touches. No, he cut his touches from 33 to 23. 10 less touches, and we win the game by 6 goals. If he gets 10 more touches, Merritt, forward of the ball, I imagine that game would be closer. No doubt. Because he's their highest score involvement player in the team. It's just nullifying. These players are too good to stop, right? Yeah. There was, back in the day, people try to tag Judd, people try to tag Ablett. You just have to tag him to not let him get 60 and 5 goals.
Yeah.
You take 30 and 2 against blows like that. You know what I mean? And obviously that's a higher extent. But for guys like Myers, if we can just cut down their goal assist numbers to half, you go and win the game probably.
And I reckon that's one of the things with Myers. Like, he probably hasn't been exposed to that tag before. Like, I don't think other sides have really looked at the Cats and be like, all right, we are going to tag Myers, which I kind of I couldn't see why, because he's crucial in that forward line.
That's it. Yeah.
He's crucial, and he uses the 40 kicks to really set up and really isolate the Cameron and the Hawkins, and even let's be real, like a Shannon Neal who's been playing quite solidly. I don't know if he will play this week, but it's another conversation where like you put yeah, kind of put the pressure on Graham Myers and see how he goes and see how he would be impacted. And who knows, he might shit the bed.
Yes.
Because who knows? Like we will never know. And if we expose him when he is tagged, that might be something like exactly like Tom Stewart when he has been tagged this season. Do the same thing to a Myers, and you're like, wow, okay, well maybe that is something that heading into the next few years and heading into finals, if the Cats do make the finals, teams know that. Teams know that. So yeah, I completely agree about the opposition watch backline, and I'm going to go with Tom Stewart as well. I think he's the player that is a big threat down there, so I won't touch on too much more about that. But let's now move on to our midfield opposition watch, Stafford Boy, and who have you got for the Cats this week?
I think you can't really go past him. I know he's more of a winger, but he has been playing in the middle, and it's Max Holmes. I think he's going to run away with their best and fairest for mine. I think he's been their most consistent performer all year, and he's just got that speed, doesn't he? You just can't catch him. You just can't catch him when he's flying. You know, credit to him, he's just re-signed. Obviously, Collingwood were interested, so that's good. He's stay out of the Cats. Don't have to go to that, shit club. But no, he's just one of those players that perfect modern day speedster, isn't he? Those guys they're just quick and you can't catch them. And it's like Sard. They got that break line speed. You can't take them on. You know what I mean? Like whether it's they both work great defensively. I think Holmes works great defensively. Like he's a national runner, I think, when he was 18. So obviously he's a sprint runner. So obviously that showcases on the footy field. But it's the ability to run the other way. And that's why I've always admired the Cats and their discipline when they play football. That's why they're good, Patto. They all buy in, mate. Even when they're struggling or during the year, they buy in. They might lose the game, but there's 10 minutes to go in the last quarter, and you see Holmes at full back, and all of a sudden he's kicking it inside 50 a minute later. And what does that look like? Blake Acres and Ollie Hollins. They do exactly the same thing, which is, it's just a really, really good thing for us personally. But we've got to watch Holmes as well, and he could be tagged. He'll be watched for sure.
I completely agree about Holmes. I think he's a big threat come like Friday night. But another player also we touch about Chincotta. He hasn't even been mentioned, Holmes. So do you think? I mean, I know that we've touched on Stewart and the Myers, who are crucial players for their structure. But do you reckon Holmes, who's had almost an All-Australian sort of season this year, do you reckon that might be a player that Vossi might put a magnet on come this week for Chincotta?
Yeah, it's Chincotta's just flying around everywhere, isn't he?
Yep.
When he didn't play the first 8 weeks, then all of a sudden he's picking up all 3 of Geelong's most impactful players. But and that's a credit to the coaching staff and him personally. But he's definitely one. I think the thing about Chincotta and why he's good, he's got the pace. Chincotta, he's got the pace to keep up with guys. I know Holmes has got that extra pace, but I think he can keep up with him. It's just about using it and positioning where you want to be able to nullify Max Holmes. But yeah, he's definitely one of them. It'll be very interesting to see. I can't wait for that first bounce to see who Chincotta takes. That'll be my kind of watchful eye, I reckon, at the start of the game on Friday night.
Even if there isn't a genuine player that we do tag, do you think Chincotta still gets a game this week? If Vossi chooses not to tag, do you think he's purely in right now as a tagger, or do you think there's still a role for him if he doesn't tag?
I think there's no role for him in the back half.
Yeah.
I think there's absolutely no room for him at the moment. Not having a go at him, but I think he has to stay in the team.
Yeah.
His impact in these llast quarters with ball in hand too. Like people were bagging him last week saying, "Oh, but Merritt still beat him" or whatever. But his job was to stop him, and he kicked 2 goals in the last quarter on him. Yeah. People talked about Chincotta. They didn't talk about Merritt. They did not talk about Merritt's 23 touches or whatever the Essendon supporters were talking about. You know what I mean? Like it's for me, and in the last quarter against Port Adelaide, take his moment. He's a good footballer.
He is.
He's a job doer, right? So he got the ability. I think he has to tag or just be that defensive forward if he goes forward, or it's really going to depend on. Well, what he's done is he has started forward and then being the extra mid. That's how it's worked. So it wasn't like he started in the middle particularly. He'd come in after the bounce and go straight to whoever the guy that we're trying to nullify, whether it was Butters. It was so funny though. Like you just seen a half forward doesn't even care about his man. We're getting that +1 at the stoppage, frees up at Cripps, and then forces them to kind of bring it forward up. You know what I mean? Like it works in a lot of different ways. People see the one dimension, but you go, if like you get an extra in the middle, then they go, oh, does whoever's on Chincotta, does he stay back or does he come in? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, Chris Scott's probably going, "Oh shit, we got to bring it forward in because we've got an extra number at the stoppage, which is one of our strengths." So it's a chain reaction in a sense that it's not just that one-on-one matchup, but it's all the other matchups. Thinking about that matchup, and can they even the numbers up at the contest, or do they want an extra back, or do they want their the same forward structure? It's a brain fuck when you think about it. But that's why coaches get paid while they get paid.
Yeah, no, real well said. But yeah, that's why the best teams in the competition. And you said then about how Chin Cotter is that job doer, but he also executes in front of God. The best teams in the competition. The reason why they're so good is, of course, they have the firepower up forward, but they've also got midfielders and other players that can contribute on the scoreboard. At the end of the day, the team that always wins is the team that has a high score on the board. So, that's why Chincotta, I think he kicked 2 goals against the Dons, and he kicked a goal against the Power.
Yep.
So, he's been actually quite solid in front of goal. But it's not just him. It's Holland's kicked 3 goals against the Dons. And Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow don't need to kick as many goals anymore. And of course, I would love Charlie Curnow to kick 9 goals every week, but if he doesn't, we've got Elijah Hollands and Chincotta combining for 5 goals. Yeah. That's great for that's great for my heart because and then at least to the game, I don't have to rely on buddy Mackay or Charlie Curnow to get the goals. We've got a guy like who knows Dom McHugh who might come in to keep the goals. It's up to every boy. But let's now move on to So I'm obviously my midfield watch is. It's Patrick Dangerfield. Now, this is a bit of a risky one because he's not 100% to come back in. I think he's very, very likely to come back in. But if he plays, I think he is a big watch for mine. I know that we spoke about it before the episode, Dave Boy, and you might have a bit of a different opinion about that. I'm sure, of course, you still rate him very highly. Exactly. Yeah. But it's more like I think whenever he enters an AFL field, I still think there is definitely that aura about him, and you have to put some sort of attention to him. And I think this could be another player that Chincotta can go to. We should change this bloody episode to Chincotta chat because it's been all about Chincotta. Who's he got to?
It's like bugging all the other players. We'll talk about the bloody tagger who gets 10 captains a week. Don't worry about the captain or Walsh gets 70 a week. I'll talk about Alex Chincotta, but it's been a topic of discussion in the mainstream media too. Yeah, so it's not just us talking about it, but I think Cripper often goes to danger. He often goes to danger. They often go head to head. So I think that there'll be the 2 kind of bulls going at it. If that's just my point of view on it, but
yeah. So would you would you even reckon George Hewitt could go to a Dangerfield as a head to head to have that the head of the Bulls?
Yeah, you could. I just feel like
Cripps in danger.
Yeah, it's just something about it. I think he's always had that matchup. Even when he was young, Cripper, he used to always take Dangerfield. I think kind of Dangerfield kind of goes over to him as well, knowing that they're 2 guys who can beat each other. Yeah. Because I think you can't. They're kind of untaggable players, in my opinion. I think Cripps and Dangerfield, they're too powerful to tag. I think you can tag guys like Merritt and you can tag guys like Butters and Anderson and guys like that. But they're strong, but they're not like Cripps can find the ball from just brute, just pushing through packs. Whether it's Zach Butters, can he do that? Probably not. Can Merritt probably do that? Not all the time. So I think him and Danger are just that kind of neck and neck going. We're going to take each other on for 4 quarters of football, and unless Danger does his hammy again in the second quarter, but. See, that's another watch as well. He's come back from an injury. So is he 100% right? I think he would be by now. But you played a pretty good team, Paddy. So watch over your shoulder, brother.
Shout out to you, Dangerfield. I'm sure
Yeah,
you would be
good.
watching this
Yeah,
this episode right now. I'm sure you would just for a bit of a pre-game hype up. I don't even know, but yeah. Well, another player when they played against us in round 8, round 9, whenever it was, round 7, I think it was actually. Cam Guthrie,
yeah.
another player that came back
Yep.
when he was kind of under an injury cloud, and he's not playing now, is he?
No, he didn't play against the Swans. I'm looking at their list. No, he's had some issues with soft tissue. He's almost at that stage of his career, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, where they just keep kind of recurring. It's similar to Danger for me, but
Mhm.
it's just the way that lingering calves and lingering quads. So he's a good player though.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly right. So let's now move on to our last line in the opposition watch, Daffy Boy, and it is the forward line, obviously. So this is probably their strongest line. Arguably, maybe you could also mention the back line as well. But your forward line opposition watch for the Cats, who have you got?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. They've obviously got some stars down there. Some different type of players. Always, that's what always I kind of admire about the Cats over the years. They've been able to evolve their forward line and keep it at a good level, even with some personnel maybe not playing as well. But Tom Hawkins, his output isn't where it was. Right, it's just not going to be where it was ever again. And he's always struggled against the Wiedering. But my one is a guy who's definitely coming in. It's Ollie Henry. He's we always find a little bit of trouble against him. It's just I don't know. I think we haven't had a defense this solid ever. So I'd love to see him come up against a back 6, back 7 that have been really consistent. Whether it's a Cowan on him just be that junkyard dog and just go at him all game because he's one of those players where he kind of can shirk it a bit. Ollie Henry when he's faced with a bit of physicality or a bit of what I mean. Like he floats around, kicks his goals, right? But is he willing to work hard enough on a guy like
Mm.
Cowan? Is he? I'm not sure because Cowan can really put it up to some forwards who really don't want the contact. So, and there could be guys like Newman, etc. There's a lot of guys who can play on him, but he's one of those guys. He's that mid-range forward, like you said, with some of the players we've got at the moment that plays tall. He plays taller than himself. So, and he always kicks his goals from about 10 meters out, doesn't he? He's always taking, and like you said, you take those marks, you got to kick those goals. You got to convert all the time. So, it's for us to can we force them wide? Can we force them wide? That is the big thing for them because guys like him, Stengel, and I'm sure you'll touch on names. They love their goals, 15 meters out, slight angle maybe even. So Ollie Henry's the watch for me, and he's a big in for them.
Yeah, no, I like it. So you mentioned there about Ollie Henry and obviously the impact that he can have in this Geelong forward line, and obviously having like Hawkins and Cameron down there. Like I think he's at third forward, and like even a Gary Rowan is another player that don't know if he played against the Swans. So he's another player that I don't think he will come back in no way, but he's another player that was probably classified as a third forward before Henry came over to the Cats from the Pies. So, but do you think so? You obviously would assume Wiener will go to Hawkins.
Yep.
Probably would assume McGovern would go to Cameron.
Has to. Has to.
Kemp
Yep.
to Henry.
Yep. Yeah, he did last time. Yep.
Yeah. So that's
And
probably the
Stengel,
three. Sorry,
Stengel's their highest goal kicker. So
I reckon Sard goes to single.
oh, true. Fuck, we've got a good defense, don't we, when you think about it. And
Yeah.
then and then Cowan can take like a close or a, and then there's the Myers conversation. You probably it's tough. And then who's Newey taking?
Close.
Yeah.
Now another player is Neil, who's another tall down there.
Yeah. So then you might have to go Kemp on him maybe, and then you go Newman on Henry.
Yep.
You can cover it.
Yeah.
And then you never know with Chinkora if he's playing behind the ball to tag Myers, that just creates another opening. So it's just you're laughing at Chinkora that he mentioned again. But no, but it's a conversation to have. I guess we've had plenty of conversation about it, but I should put him on the thumbnail. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, the matchups. But I think we can match up well against them because they've got those kind of dynamic forwards that link with our defense.
Yeah, I would probably expect Chincotta to go to Hawkins actually. Or even Chincotta maybe to go to I don't know, like maybe Toby Conway even as a bit of a but, I reckon Chincotta has to be the thumbnail on this video. I think he's definitely a player.
He might take Chris Scott on in the box, I reckon.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Tag him in the box, like when he comes out for the quarter time spray. We're going mad here.
Yeah. All right. So my forward line opposition watch. It's one of the players that you've mentioned then, and it's Tyson Stengel.
Yep.
He's a player that as soon as you look into our forward line, like you've got, it shows how good Stengel and also Henry are because we haven't even mentioned Cameron or Hawkins. So they're the two front players in that forward line. But yeah, I think Stengel is that big threat. And he's been offered a contract for I think it's 4 years on about 700K from the Cats, but I think there's a few other clubs apparently that offering even more or are set to offer even more. What's your thoughts on that?
He's been great, but
700K.
He's been good, but is he 700K?
That's what
I reckon that offers almost too much by the Cats. But
yeah,
I know he's been good, but I got a feeling where the big deals are coming from too. St Kilda and Essendon. There's no fucking doubt in my mind. It's one of those clubs, no doubt in my mind, and I got a feeling he'll go too. What Tom Morris is saying, apparently he's going to take the biggest deal, the highest bidder. So shout out to him for doing that. Like, people talk about loyalty, but you're not playing footy forever, so you got to take the money where it goes. But yeah, hopefully he barely sees the ball on Friday night.
Yep. Well, could that even be a player that we throw a contract on at the start of the end of the year?
People talk about it. It's just a matter of do we have the cash for it, but depends on the delistings and what we do with our, structure and we're willing to throw cash at what's his face, Hayward. So
yep.
I'm not sure if we can offer more than 700. I don't even know if I want to offer more than 700.
Well, no way. But that's what I'm saying. Like 700K from the Cats is unbelievable.
Yeah, considering they always offer a little bit lower, don't they?
Exactly right.
I think it's just because his output's been pretty good. I think they know Hawkins is on his way out, so I don't know. But anyway, bugger him.
Yeah, exactly right. So let's now move on to our match predictions, Daft Boy. Now, I'm just going to start straight away. Bagger of the game is Alex Chincotta to... No, I'm kidding. But let's now move on to, obviously, the match predictions. But bagger of the game, point of difference, winner plus margin. Obviously, the bagger of the game is who we think is the most impactful player come Friday night. Point of difference, obviously, as it says there, is a point of difference come Friday night. But also, winner plus margin, we choose who we think might win the game, but also the margin as well. So, Daft Boy, match predictions, what have you got?
The Chincotta call was quite funny, to be honest. No, my player of the game, it's going to be Mitch McGovern.
Love it.
Because he's going to beat Jeremy Cameron. We need to beat him. We haven't got his number. He's killed us every year. Even in the game we beat him last year. One of the greatest individual performances I've ever seen live. He couldn't miss. He was kicking 6 goals. He had Lewis James. So that's your answer. So Mitch McGovern, bagger of the game. Point of difference. It's our man. It's Alex Chincotta. He's the point of difference. He has to be the point of difference. He's changing games the way he's playing. So he is my point of difference, Patto. Tagger of the game, Alex Chincotta. But no, in all seriousness, winner plus margin. I've got us winning this weekend. I think it's another challenge. It's not going to be easy. I'm not here to say it's easy. The Cats are always tough. Yeah. They made it tough for Sydney a few weeks ago, even though Sydney still won by 5 goals. But they made it tough there for the first kind of half of that game. So winner plus margin, I've got the Blues by 28 points at the MCG. I want one more comfortable one, Patto, before we hit this good part back end of the season. Honestly, I think we can get this win where we go a big first half and then go, nah, fuck this. Go again. Why not? Why not? I'm not saying it's easy, but if we get in that position, I want to see us put the foot on the throat against a good team. You know what I mean? And go, oh shit, they're like, oh, like, you know what I mean? When people go, oh, even though they have been the last few weeks, when we, put the foot to the throat against Port, Essendon, we finished that game. We got to 41 points up in the
Mm,
last quarter. The game was done with 15 minutes to go. So I want that kind of thing, but almost just go. Give me a 50-point win against a good team. So
mm.
it's just a matter of how we start this game. And our start is crucial because if we give him the opening we did last time, miss our shots, goes down the other end, Zach Tui pulls him out of his ass, like that type of stuff. You know what I mean? It hurts mentally. You can't catch up when it keeps happening when you miss crucial chances, and on the other end they're clinical. So I think we've figured that out though, haven't we, in the last few weeks in terms of our ball movement forward and also defensively, not leaking those easy, Brad close goals. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, I think our starts this year have been like they've improved as the season has gone on, and
Yeah.
like that's one of the things there where I've wanted to mention is how great we've been the past few weeks. But as you said, that we haven't had a convincing win against I guess a notable contender. But I don't even know if Geelong are that contender anymore.
No, if they win this week, maybe. But I, I don't want to say it, but I think we're a step above them. I know they beat us, and that was good on them. Nothing against them, and it's tough. But I think we just have to prove ourselves we're better than them, and we have to win this weekend, whether we like it or not. I know it's a home and away game, but if we win this game, you go 10-4. And we talked about the draw, Patto. We talked about the draw. It's a very, very favourable draw at the back end of the year this year. So let's just get it done, Patto.
Exactly right. So yeah, so my bagger of the game, it's a play that hasn't really been featured a hell of a lot in our votes, maybe, arguably. Well, no, actually, come the leaderboard, I think he was in the top 5, actually. He may not have been like what I'm trying to say is like he isn't featured many times throughout the year as the bag of the game in our match predictions. And it's Sam Walsh.
Yeah.
I think just he hasn't had that
Yeah.
Walshy game. And I'm just like, I just can't. As soon as I did this, I was like, yeah, Sam Walsh straight away. I think he's going to be that bagger of the game, and I'm predicting 34 touches, and he's going to dominate that midfield.
Yeah.
Like the Cats, let's be real, I don't think they're great in that midfield, but he's going to show them why. But also Hewitt and Cripps and Kennedy, they're going to combine as well. So I think Sam Walsh is due for a big game. Now, a point of difference. I've gone with Lockie Cowan.
Yep.
He hasn't. He's played that great game, and he's played that breakout game. That I think he's set for another breakout game against one of the best teams in the competition.
Yep.
So I think Lockie Cowan is that point of difference. Now my winner plus margin, completely agree. I think it's I realistically think, and I'm not usually like this. I'm usually on the other side, just a little bit cautious and worried about it. But I'm comfortable this week. Blues by 32 points.
Yep. We should be. And if we're going into games going, oh, it's not a good sign. Like I said in the mid-season review and that clip that you posted, that good clip you put together, we're going into games going, we got to win this game. We don't accept losing games of football anymore. And, honourable losses. Obviously, it's here and there. Sometimes there's out the hat in the game where both teams are going at it. But this week, I don't want a game that's going at it. If we're going at it, I want to be a step above like the Essendon game. They were up with us at certain stages, but we were just always that. I want Geelong chasing us, not us chasing them like last time. That's all I want. The table's turning. Us get to a 5-goal lead, and then they need some Cameron heroics to somehow come back in the game, which might not happen. So, I think you're spot on in terms of your confidence.
Yeah. And I think the tables have turned, as you've mentioned. Now Carlton are pretty much where Geelong were in that round 7 game, where now we are kind of the benchmark in the competition alongside Sydney or maybe a Collingwood to a stretch as well. Yeah. And the Cats need that kind of the return game to show that they're actually still a solid side, because we saw it against Sydney where they pretty much outplayed them in the first quarter, but then they shut the bed for the next 3. So I'm sure they are wanting, especially after their break with the bye as well, because they obviously had their bye last week as well. So we're both coming in off the bye, which is great. And,
Yeah, it's
and
really
I'm
bad.
sure the Cats would want to have that redemption game, and they want to come into this week. I mean, obviously they beat us throughout the year, so they know what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But tables have turned because
Yeah.
now they're one of that great sides, and I think for them to beat us, they need to play the best football they performed this year.
Yeah.
Where
I
I
agree.
think we played really well against them, but we could have done better, and we know that we
Yeah.
could do better because we've seen it the past 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's crucial that we know that the Cats are going to be there for the fight, but it's where we need to put them away in the crucial stages. And when we're 30 points, when we're 30 meters out in front of goal, we can't afford to miss that. We need to take the opportunities where they are and know that if we don't, it will come back to bite us in the bum. So, Dave Boy, but before we wrap up the episode, Dave Boy, of course, that's the last segment. We'll touch on for the preview episode. But is there anything else you would like to touch on before we wrap it up?
Just get it done, boys. It's going to be a tough game. Australia, they'll be ready for it. They're always ready. They're always ready, the Cats. We just got to come out hot because they've had some, they started well against Sydney, but prior to that, they had a slow start against Richmond, slow start against Port, slow start against Giants. It comes back to hurt you. And if you slow start against us, what happens, Patty? We put you away. So it's exciting. It's going to be a big game, and just win. I just want another win. Give me another win against a good side. And then you get to finals time and you go, I don't care who we play, other than Sydney, maybe. You know, you get to that point, it's like, I don't care who we play. We've beat them this year. You know what I mean? Like, it's a mental fucking game, finals. Like, when we went into that Melbourne game, Pat, how confident were we?
Yeah.
As if we weren't playing a top 4 side in that semi-final. Because we already beat them 4 weeks before that. It's like, we know how to beat them. So obviously they know how to beat us this year. But if we can get it over them and then maybe end up playing them in a final this year, then you go, okay, we learned from our loss, beat them the last time. Let's use that as a blueprint for beating them again later in the year.
You know, completely spot on. Very well wrapped up. So to every single blue bagger out there, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. So I've just gone onto our YouTube channel and wanted to make sure the exact figure of what our YouTube subscribers are. So it's 943. So we are 67 subscribers off the 1,000 mark. So make sure to like, comment on this video, but make sure to also subscribe if you do enjoy the content, because we do upload preview and review episodes every single week. So make sure to try and get around those. But obviously, if you do enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe. But also get around our podcast platforms as well. We're obviously on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, which is the one that I found out a few weeks ago, Daft Boy. But there's a few other ones out there. So make sure to get around those, but also get around our social platforms. They are the normal Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So make sure to get around those. I think we're almost up to 2,000 2,000 followers on TikTok. So that's great. We're also doing very well on our Instagram as well. So I think that we're up to about 1,300 or something on our Instagram, roughly.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe a little bit more.
It might be 1.6, maybe.
1.6. Okay. Well, wait.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm just pulling that out of my ass, but it's around the mark.
Yeah, no, exactly right. But you know, so as we said, we absolutely have a blast coming on every 2 times a week to do a preview and review episode to come out, and we are very fortunate to have a platform like this to come out. And if we're really pissed off or really happy with the baggers, we can come out and actually have a platform to speak our mind. But to you, Daffy boy, and to every single blue bagger out there,
Up the baggers.
Up the baggers.